A very good afternoon to each one present over here. I, Sakshi Gambhir, along with my co-host Tushar Varshney, feels really very delighted to welcome our eminent guest for the day, Miss Sudeshna Chakrabarti, faculty members and all my dear friends to the seminar Gearing Up for the Corporate Career.
It's a holy tradition to worship our goddess Saraswati before any important event. Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, music, art, and nature, represent a free flow of wisdom and consciousness. With these words, we would like to invite faculty coordinators on the dais for our traditional and auspicious lamp lighting ceremony as a tribute to Ma Saraswati. And we request all to stand to pay homage to goddess Saraswati.
या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रामृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या पद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युत शङ्कर प्रभृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेष जाड्यापहा।
I think we have truly spread a spiritual vibe, creating a state of trance with the magnetic voices. May the divine grace of goddess be with us today and always. Thank you.
Today we have amongst us Miss Sudeshna Chakrabarti. Sudeshna ma'am can be described as someone who is extremely forthright and loves to talk. So no wonder that she took to the role of a trainer as the proverbial duck takes to water. Sudeshna ma'am has done her master's in corporate communications from MICA Ahmedabad and then navigated her career as a media professional and a corporate trainer and eventually as a trainer for the various entrance exams. Sudeshna ma'am is passionate in helping young and inquisitive minds to realize their true potential through the learning and relearning process, and it's her ardent belief that sincerity and persistence always yield success. In today's globalized world, clear and coherent communication plays a decisive role in shaping one's future. With almost 15 years of experience, Sudeshna ma'am strives to use this key skill to inspire and transform. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invite to interact with the budding managers. May we have a huge round of applause for Sudeshna, ma'am.
GL Bajaj Institute of Management and Research was established in 2007 under the umbrella of GL Bajaj Group of Institutions. GLBIMR has a constant endeavor to make the student the best management profession with innovatory skills in alliance with providing the great corporate exposure and education for the benefit of the nation at large. With a great pride and honor, we take this opportunity to share the GL Bajaj Institute of Management and Research PGDM Institute, Greater Noida, has been ranked AA plus under ranking of India's best B school not zone by Career 360 in November 2020. We are proud to announce that GLBIMR has been ranked first in the Delhi NCR, second in the North India under ranking of business school, special declared in Business Standard, January 2021 issue magazine. So can we have a huge round of applause for our own GLBIMR? Today we have gathered here to attend seminar on gearing up for the corporate career.
Corporate career helps to uncover hidden potential and support succession planning. This workshop is to appraise students about the expectations of the corporate from the young management graduates. This webinar will help the students in understanding the importance of soft skills for excelling in the corporate career.
Now we humbly request Ms. Sudheshna Chakrabarty ma'am to please start the session.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and I hope my voice is absolutely clear. No issues on that front.
Yes, ma'am, it's all fine.
Is it okay?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll be sharing my screen so that we can follow through with the presentation that I have for all of you over here. Now, I'll just quickly explain how I intend to conduct this particular session. I'll obviously start by talking about the main focus of our seminar today. And I've kept an open house at the end. So any of you who have any questions that you possibly need to ask me, or you think of any question that possibly pops up your head while the presentation is going on and you think you'll need some, personalized attention to that, I have no issue answering them. There's open house at the end of the entire presentation. I'd request you to keep your questions ready, and I'll take your questions. I'll try and answer, all your questions as possible by the end. Okay, so that's how I'll be conducting this. Okay, so I hope the screen is properly presented and there's no technical glitch on that front. So I'll take it up from here then. So welcome everyone to our institute, that is Cubics, and we have been, most of the faculties over here all have almost more than 12 to 14 years of experience, and we specialize in business communication, training for softer skills, and preparing our students apart from the various other management, training aspects that goes in hand with it. Okay, now going to your seminar, let's start with some simple statistics so that you understand what we are in for and what is it that we are looking at, some very hardcore facts. Now, 2020-21, the approximate graduate, according to statistics, is around 3.66 crore in India. Okay, that's statistics for you. And you have an average unemployment rate of about 23.5%. So I think most of you would work out the math, right? You work out exactly the kind of competition that every year the graduates face when they're sitting for their placements, when they're sitting for any kind of, job offering, and when you're preparing for your interviews or you're preparing for any kind of softer skills. Okay, so to understand how grave the situation is, to understand that how important it is for you to constantly upgrade yourself with the right skills necessary so that you make a difference in the job market, to present yourself with the best, to the best of your ability, to the best that you are, and make yourself compatible with the requirements of the corporates in hand. The missing link that generates employment is skill development. So it is something that you have to constantly look at and work towards upgrading yourself by working towards it in a very planned manner. Now, when I talk of skill development, the first question comes is, what kind of skill am I looking at? Okay, what is exactly skill development? What skill am I talking of? Even when you say soft skill, I wonder how many of you actually go to the depth to understand that. So the differentiating factor is that it has to be a combination of hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills, as all of you know, is a degree that you're preparing for. So obviously, your grades, the kind of schooling you've had so far, the educational qualification, those things do come into a play. But then, having said that, even if you take your own institute as an example, in the same class, you know how many students of you are there, and when a company comes in, how many seats are they actually offering? So you know the competition over there, right? So your hard skill plays a particular part to a certain extent. Okay, so it gets you to a particular level. The selection process where you possibly finish up the written exam wherein they ask you questions pertaining to your backdrop, and a lot of times you actually don't sit for the subject that you have actually graduated in. A lot of you want to go into some other field as well, okay, which exactly doesn't pertain to what you have studied. So even in that sense, this particular skill is only acceptable to a certain extent. So it is a combination of hard skill and a lot of soft skills. So this together is what gives you the career readiness. How ready are you to embark on your career? Okay, So it's a key requirement for any MBA graduate for a successful transition into the corporate workforce. So we'll have to understand first that what is that the corporates are looking at, what is it that they want from you, and what is it that you have to prepare so that when you sit for your interviews, when you are putting yourself forward to the job market, you carry the requisite amount of skills that would get you over there. Okay. Now, what I've done is I've taken a few of the requisite competencies without going into a lot of it, because first of all, obviously we have some limited time over here and there's no way I can do justice to the entire segment of it. So I've taken up the most important ones, although in no particular order, but yeah, communication always is the crux of the matter. I'm going to start off with verbal communication. Now, very effective people, they always, whoever you see, whoever you like, or if you admire people, if you think back inside your head about the people you admire or the people you are impressed with or you look up to, I think one skill that you will always notice that is common to these people is the way they talk. Okay. When I say the way you talk, necessarily language, English is not always, although we have to confine ourselves to English because that's the corporate language, nothing you can do about it. But when I talk of communication, good communication is in any language. If you are a Marathi, you are a Hindi speaking person, you are a Telugu or a Tamil or a Bengali. Okay. When you speak, if you are effective, if you know how to talk, make yourself understand, impressive, use the right kind of words, wherein people feel compelled to listen to you. They would want to listen to you. There's no force involved. Okay. That's the kind of communication I'm talking of. Of course, English is the language over here, simply because if you're going for a job, your regional languages don't come into play at the first go. Okay. It might work out later once you're in the job or something. So maybe there you can think of using original language. We do use our regional languages as well, depending on where we are or whom we are talking to, but not so in any formal meeting or obviously not in interviews and GDs and anything of that sort. That never happens. So English communication, yes, that's an important part. And verbal communication, I'm going to talk about it in two parts. The first part is obviously when you use verbal communication, what is it that you're required to do? But before that, what I would like to talk about, or what I would like to stress on, is something that most people miss. So when we talk of communication, or let's say verbal communication, one of the biggest issues that I have found, or and possibly a lot of other people will also tell you, people who are in HR, people who notice people, of trainers like us, because that's another thing that we are also good at. People don't listen. Okay, listening is one of the strongest skills when it comes to verbal communication. It sounds a little awkward, right? It sounds awkward when I say listening. But how is it a part of communication? Because if you don't listen, you are not really ready to communicate the way it has to be communicated. It is said that most people listen to answer, which means that when somebody says something to you, inside your head, you are already gearing up to give an answer. You just want to come out with an answer to, what, this is what I want, this is how I would want it to say, or this is what the answer should be like. So maybe you're already building up the blocks inside your head. You're not really listening with an open mind. You're not listening with an open ear. And because of that, you lose out on the essence of communication. Communication is a two-way traffic. If you are closed, if you are not in the mindset of listening, then you are not in the right frame of mind to answer. I will give you an example that tends to happen in interviews. Why do people fail in interviews? What is there to fail? I mean, there's no such, how would you even fail there? Okay, there's no such word as failing in an interview. Okay, you just don't get through. A lot of it happens because you are so, geared up to give an answer to the question being asked, because you enter the interview room and the first thought of you is that the entire process inside your head is, I need to answer all the questions. I need to answer everything that they're going to ask me. You are just pepping yourself up for that. And in that process, what gets lost is that you need to really understand what is it that the interviewer is asking for. What does that person want you to talk about? Okay. So if you don't listen well, you're going to interpret it all wrong inside your head, or maybe have an assumption inside your head that this is what I'm supposed to answer, and that might not be correct. So listening forms a huge, important part of the way you communicate when you talk. Okay. In this, again, without going into too much of details, the body language part, reading the right body language, the eye movement, everything comes into play over that. Okay. So when you are a really good communicator, you notice all that. In an informal setting, what happens is you don't have to bother so much. So with your friends and families and stuff, you can make out because you know that person very well. So if that person is acting agitated or not really saying exactly what that person is supposed to say, you still get it. Why? Because you know that person. But imagine yourself in a formal setting where you don't know the other person, be it a GD or be it an interview, when you have to formally present yourself and give an answer, where if you don't listen well, it would obviously not be in your favor because you're not constructing the right reply. So that's one very important part of it. Now coming to the actual speaking part. Now imagine if I said, or if I conducted this seminar by saying, you know what, if you can COUC to communicate well. Now, if I use these fillers constantly when I'm speaking, how irritating would it sound to you after 5 minutes? You would stop listening to me immediately because it sounds extremely irritating. I'll tell you why this happens. This happens for two reasons. One is that you're not really used to speaking in a formal language for an extended period of time, possibly not really in a setting. Some of you might be, because if you have been holding positions where you've needed to talk a lot, for example, maybe people who are class representatives or people who do a lot of presentations and stuff. So for them, this might not be so much of an issue. But for most people who do not communicate on any formal level, speaking for an extended period of time without using fillers is a challenge. That's one. The second thing that tends to happen over here is that more you use the fillers, the more you struggle with the right words to come out that would, actually help you express yourself the best way. Because you don't really use the language much, your brain fails to provide you with the right kind of words. So until unless you practice this, until unless you know what kind of an answer you would want to give, and the answer is inside your head, you are struggling for the words that would help you come out with that. So these are some very, very normal barriers to verbal communication. Okay. So when you speak positively oriented words, you should always speak to showcase the right mindset, so that it creates a very positive vibe about you as a person. It immediately, settle down doubt about your integrity, the way you would project yourself. So verbal communication is one of the strongest force today, given even you can see how media usage and how communication can be used for. We tend to use it for a lot of negative purposes, but if you look at it, breaking down barriers, breaking down all distances, how communication plays such a strong part in it, right? So this is one area where beyond everything is something that you need to invest in, and something that you have. This is one of the strongest skills that you can think of owning, wherein you can make a difference to your candidature. I always say that you might be a little less on the talent. Okay, you might be a 7.5er or an 8.5er on the grade scale. Okay, but if you talk like $1 million, if you can talk like someone who knows what he or she is talking about, you would possibly rate yourself higher than any 9-pointer. Believe me, I have seen it happening with so many students across all these years. Okay. Because if you are someone who's totally inside a book or inside just your projects and stuff and not really paying attention to the world around you, not really used to, even if you do have the talent inside you, you have what it takes, but you just don't know how to platform it, how to bring it forward, then you are going to struggle. So maybe a little less, a 2-point less or a 5-point less, but then if you can really communicate well, put forward your ideas and you're smart enough, that really ups your game to quite a level. So this is possibly one of the most important skills that I can stress on, that for any of you to bank on. Okay, moving on. The second is written communication. So written communication can be like your SOPs or your resumes. Okay, so if you're looking at the business communication part of it, now you will be giving out professional emails and communication with client or a current business plan. Until unless you know how to communicate accurately and effectively on paper, it doesn't sell. Okay, this is a business world today. No matter, even if you're selling your candidates, the best way to project yourself, the best way you describe your qualities, the way you write your SOP, it makes the entire difference to the way they view. Okay, in an interview room, you don't go first, right? Your resume goes in. So the way you've written your resume, or if you've written an SOP, that goes in first. Okay, so they read that SOP. So when they read that SOP, they have some idea about you as a person. They read it and then they dissect it, and then they try and find out, okay, so this person says this thing. So we should be looking at something of this sort. So they slot you into certain points. And then when you are inside that PI room, then they try and see and match you that what you have written and what you are delivering, how much of it is same. But that's the second part. The first part is what kind of an opinion are they forming? Are they forming a generally positive opinion, an honest positive opinion about you, that yeah, this person looks to be someone who's a go-getter, someone who's a hard worker, or someone who looks very reliable, or someone who looks like he's very persistent, someone who appears to be a jack of all trades? What image are you projecting through the written communication that you have sent in? So this helps them have an image inside their head. So if you use the right kind of words, the right way of expression on paper, that is where you make a lot of difference to helping you. When you go to the second step of being called for the interview, this particular first step actually paves the way for you. I mean, God forbid if certain kind of negativity is associated with the way the image builds up. So if you start the interview on a negative sense, it would be so difficult for you to turn the tide, right? For anyone. So it's very important that we start the first step with the right words, with the right image, so that when they are expecting you, they have that image inside your head. So the interview always starts on that particular note. Okay. So this is basically how important the written communication part of it. So one problem that I've always found in written communication is that because most exams these days, are of, just marking your answers, your options are always given and just mark your answers. A lot of students don't really write anymore. Okay. So if I can give you an example, what happens was when the IIMs actually stopped doing, the GD, they stopped the GDs and they started the essay. Okay. There was a huge cry because by the time of 3 years or 4 years of college, when people have done it, when they had to now sit for, when they were entering into the management course and they had to now write an essay, believe me, writing even a 150-word essay was a challenge for most people. I mean, I'm not even talking about the grammar. Okay, grammar is far, far beyond. I'm talking about simple sentence constructions. A sentence construction that does not look like a class 7th or a class 8 guy has written, but somebody with maturity, somebody with the right kind of life experience. When you write that, there has to be some difference between that and a class 7 guy writing something, right? So this is one of the biggest issues that I've found, that again, I would also blame it to some extent on the lack of reading, because we solely lack on that now. Most of us don't like reading. There are some of you who possibly read a lot. And whenever you read, what happens is you are opening yourself to various writing possibilities, expressions, usage of the right phrases, okay, quotations, everything. And that makes a lot of difference to the way the expression comes out as. The impression that comes out is hugely different. Even if you don't use any fancy language, it is not about using a fancy language. It is never that. Okay, nobody marks you on language. It is not an English test. It is even if it's a straightforward language, it's straightforward, worded SOP or something like your resume that you have made. It all the communication part, the way it comes out, if it comes out to be very clear and cohesive, that is where it makes a difference. Okay. So again, this is one area which again I feel is makes a huge difference to your candidature in the corporate world. Moving on. Learnability. So this is one of my very favorite quotes actually. So, and Alvin Toffler again is somebody I look up to as an author too. So the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, because those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. I think COVID-19 has been one of the biggest teachers to us in the last 1 year, when we found out skills which we never thought we could. Okay. That is a process of unlearning and learning and relearning that I talk of. It is something that I studied long back when I was reading this gentleman, and it stayed with me for a very long time. Okay, so let me just give a little time to what I mean by unlearning and relearning. Sometimes if we think that we know everything, if we think that I know about something, and in the real world, when I go out and I find the world to be something quite different, if I'm very strict, if I'm very staunch in my beliefs, if I'm somebody who's not flexible enough, what happens is I stay stubbornly, committed to what I have learned, and I do not, give myself the opportunity to take up a new thing, to understand a new thing. And that is where the problems start happening, because the new world is possibly evolving in a different manner altogether. And your stubbornness is causing you not to, gel or meld with that new world. And that is when because your unlearning is not happening, your relearning is not happening as well. So sometimes we have to forget or not exactly forget, but add new skills by letting go of something old. It is painful to some people. It is very painful because if for years somebody has learned something and then suddenly you are told that, you know what, this doesn't really work anymore and you have to do something else now, it can be, for some people, it can be a breaking factor. You guys are still young. So you know what, that staunchness has not yet set in very much. Okay, so for you, this process should be smooth. This process should be something that when you go into a new atmosphere, see, what is it that you're checking at? For example, let's say 80% of you do not have any corporate exposure. Okay, you're all freshers. So you will be entering the corporate now. So when they are taking you, they are actually betting that you as a candidate would have the right mindset to pick up their products, their business plans, the way they market it, the way they want their employees to be. And when you go forward as a representative of their house, you should be able to, communicate the way they would want to feel good about. So if they can't see that quality, that learnability, the fact that you are open to learning new things, then they don't want to bet on you anymore. So for example, when they ask you regarding your projects or your hobbies or your skills that you have learned, why do you think they ask you that? What's the point? What projects you have done? What difference does it make to them? If they're not going to use that, that project is not actually of any use to them. Because they want to know that through that project, what is it that you've learned to come? How did you adapt yourself? Okay, if their adaptations have happened in some way, so what other skills did you also add on while you were doing it? The same thing is with if you have picked up a new skill or a new hobby. For people who play sports, sportsmen are always liked across all boardrooms, let me tell you. So if some of you have been playing sports, sports is a huge selling point. Because when you learn sports, when you go out and play a sport, you pick up so many things. You're open-minded. You learn from your failures. You know why you failed, and you take it like a sportsman. When you fall down, you manage to pick yourself up again. You do that, right? The same thing, for example, if you, as a institute, if you guys have this inter-house, or let's say college functions that happens, and you get into dance competitions or debates and stuff. So if you guys have been a part of that, it makes a lot of difference to your candidature. The more exposure that you've had, the more it makes a difference, because your learnability factor would have gone up that much. Okay, so that is what they are looking at when they're asking you these kind of questions. So you will have to, mold your answer according to that. You should mold your answer wherein they get to know this skill set of yours. So this is what you need to learn, how to mold your answer, so that they get that, yes, you are someone who can be trusted to pick up a skill and use it to the most, to its complete potential. Okay, moving on. Resilience is something I personally bank on a lot. Okay, it's the ability to bounce back in the face of obstacles and failures. Now, if somebody says that I have never failed in nothing, there's no failure in my life, you can actually bet that the learning factor of that person possibly has not been very high. Okay, because if you don't fail when you don't try. So if you have not tried anything in your life, you've never really done anything in your life, obviously you haven't failed, right? So when I talk of failing, I'm not talking of a spectacular failing. Okay, failing doesn't mean that I started a company and it went bankrupt. Okay, I don't mean that. That's not what failing requires. It doesn't even mean that I failed a class, or I failed. I mean, it can be anything that you have. Everybody in life, faces some kind of failure, whether you let down a friend, whether you let down, there was some kind of competition that happened and you guys didn't win, or you wanted to start something with your friend and somehow it didn't come to fruition. It can be any of these factors, but the way you come back from it, the way you learn from it, and how it makes you a better person, that is what resilience is all about. Because you are going to face it a lot in real life. The moment you go out and work, the first thing you will notice is how competitive it is, and how much of day to day difficult, that the day to day working style over there is going to be like something that demands the best of you. So you're constantly on your toes to deliver the best. So you will possibly face issues and you might fail somewhere. But should you let that define you? Does the failure define you? So you should let your learning from the failure define you. So they actually ask you these questions, that what is your biggest failure in life so far? So honestly, you can ask yourself, do you have an adequate answer to that question? Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever thought, if you have, what did your failure has ever taught you? Success is very easy to talk about. I've done this, I've done that, I've won this, I've won that trophy. It's so easy to talk about that. But nobody wins a trophy at the first go. You go through a process, and that process is important because it builds character. So this is again one very important character that is required in the modern world, in the modern corporate. Again, as I said, COVID-19, the last year, 2020, was one of the biggest challenges to our resilience. That did we or did we not manage to pull ourselves back from something that was such a huge letback? Okay, so people have lost dear ones, people have lost jobs, people have lost so much in life. But what would you let define you? Okay, so think about this from a company's perspective, and think about what is it that you offer to them when they say that, yes, this guy has the right tenacity. The word is tenacity that should define you. That I'm going to bounce back no matter what. So how do you prove that you have it in you? Okay, moving on. Collaboration. Now, collaboration obviously became extremely important the moment you entered into a globalized world. Okay, globalization basically means collaboration. That's the beauty of having no boundaries through whether you're exchanging ideas, whether you're exchanging, your products, or sending your products across, selling it across boundaries. So collaboration became extremely important now. right now the world has shrunk so much. The workplace is just not what it used to be even 10 years back. You know, you have people working from or coming from all over the world, possibly working towards on projects. Again, as I said, the nature of the work has completely changed in last 2 years and more so from last 1 year, wherein you find experts from all over ready to converge on a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet, and everybody's brainstorming and coming together for something, to create something. Now, the important thing that happens now is teamwork. How good a team player are you? So when you sit in a GD, this is why a GD is actually, done. Because believe me, when I say that if you wanted to test your knowledge, only your knowledge on a subject, it could have been an extempore. It could have been any question across a PI table. They would not need you to do a GD. What do you need a GD for? Okay. So it is GD, most people, make a mistake of thinking of it as a debate. That means somebody has to win. If somebody says yes, somebody has to say no. And that is the biggest mistake that happens in any GD. Okay. And that is why the marks that you should be getting, you actually don't get that. One of the biggest skills that is tested, GD of course has its own parameters, but this collaboration or team spirit is one of the biggest skills that is tested in a GD. How do you behave in a manner, how do you behave in a setting that possibly might be a little on the, let's say, ruckus side, or let's say not a very congenial atmosphere always, because given the nature of the competition, how do you come across to your fellow participants? What is your behavioral pattern in that? Are you somebody who's a bully? Are you somebody who's a dominant? Are you somebody who's an aggressor? Or are you somebody who has the right qualities to put people in a bind? Are you a negotiator? Are you somebody who's a leader? Are you somebody who's a mentor? What role do you bring forward? So typically people who are not used to playing good or not used to playing with other people well, their true nature comes out during these processes. You can't really hide yourself. You think I'm going to pretend it out, or maybe you naively believe that you can. But believe me, body language always gives you away. Any good HR manager, any good trainer, the first thing that they notice about you is your body language. And when you sit in a GD, when you talk, your verbal communication and your non-verbal communication both comes out. Okay. So collaboration, because in a workforce who come from diverse cultural backdrops, religious backdrops, gender. So there's so much of diversity outside. You need to learn to gel with everyone in a manner wherein the ultimate focus is on being a professional. Okay. Not letting your personal judgments come into play over there. If you're somebody who's constantly swayed by emotions, somebody swayed by petty feelings, then it would be very difficult for you to justify it out in a corporate world. So this is something that you need to see how well you work with others. So you also asked, how many people were there in the project? What kind of work did you guys do over there? You asked to explain the process, or let's say you've gone in for some kind of competition, then they tend to ask you, okay, so what have you done over there? Tell us about the process, what the competition, how it happened, and what did you do, and how did you prepare? You actually ask those questions over there. Okay. And the reason they ask is they want to see how many people did you have to collaborate with, and how do you talk about your fellow participants. So your wordings, the way you choose to represent that entire idea, tells a lot about you as a person or the future of you when they want to take you in their company. Is that the way they would want you to talk about their people as well? So when you are talking about your experiences, make sure you know what you are doing over there, because they're checking the collaboration over there. How well have you, participated in group activities? So for people who have done that, people who take part in a lot of these activities, this would be a very big selling point. Take it from me. So you should always brush up on these answers and always, make sure that you have the right frame wherein you are able to sell this particular skill across, wherein they get this feeling about you that this guy is a team player, he knows or she knows how to take everybody along. When I say take everybody along, please understand it doesn't mean that you play the yes man or the yes, the yes sir thing. It doesn't happen like that. It's not about playing good. It's about playing right. Okay. So how you encompass diversity, how do you go beyond your personal prejudices, how do you make sure that the collective comes together as a team, you gel together as a team. So the way, the maturity of handling it, the maturity of thinking on those lines, that should come out when you are talking about the skills of yours. Okay, moving on. So another issue that I'll take up over here is problem solving. Okay, it becomes important because you can work through the challenges and you find out from their own and an effective member of the team by defining the issue, brainstorming alternatives, sharing thoughts, and then making sound decisions. Now, problem solving, if I don't get into a very complicated detail at this point of time, because it would require me to then get into a case study or something. If I bring it down to something that you would understand, let's say we are doing a GD, okay, there's a GD that is happening, and you had a very simple topic. Now, if any of you have any experiences of GDs, you will see that generally after 5 or 6 minutes, whatever fresh point had to come is already taken up, it has all come. And then after that, it is all just different examples of the same point. You just keep on talking about the same point in different manner. Okay, to make it a little more relevant, what I'll do is I'll give you my personal experience so that maybe you'll understand this particular issue better. So this happened when I was sitting for my interview, and the topic that we had was frog in the well. That was our GD topic. So there were people who started talking about, what frog in the well is. So somebody who had very limited knowledge, somebody who came from a small place, so did not want to experiment in life. We talked about people with limited vision because of lack of education, maybe, or maybe because lack of experience. So again, there were examples of businesses who did not have enough vision, and so they couldn't survive. So this went on for about 5-7 minutes. So, we were just moving around and around the circle. Now, I was lucky because just 2 days back, I was reading about the Indian economy. Economy happens to be one of my favorite subjects. So I was reading a magazine on that, and I read about the Indian economy actually leapfrogging. So I actually remember that term. I was lucky at that point of time, even in that pressure situation, I remember that term. And so I put in a point in the GD when I said that bringing in a fresh perspective, I would like to state over here that Indian economy has actually leapfrogged from an agrarian society to a service-oriented ones, and almost bypassing the manufacturing sector to quite an extent. Now, what it spells ultimately for a population-laden country like India is something possibly that remains to be seen. So I actually completely managed to stun the entire GD for a good 2 seconds because they were just simply scrambling to understand that entire change that happened over there. Now, in our times, what happened was we had the same panelists who acted as GD mentors or GD moderators as our PI members as well. When I actually got in for my interview, they asked me, how did you come across? So I was honest and I told them that I read about this in the magazine, and I was just lucky. I just remembered I could relate it. I could relate it because if you are a frog in the well, we would have just stayed agrarian, and or possibly just moved sector by sector and not jumped into the survey sector. So they actually, what I'm trying to say over here is they questioned me in detail regarding how I thought it from that perspective. For me, it was, I could see that we were stuck and we were not really moving. We were just moving around the same circle again and again. And this was my opportunity to provide a new angle. Now, when you talk of problem solving is the ability to some extent or to quite an extent to think out of the box. When everybody thinks apples, like how to put the apples in a square box, what can you do to think something else? Okay. So this takes experimentation, this takes a lot of permutations and combinations, but you need that conviction inside you, that confidence inside you that I know what I'm talking about and I know that I can do it to be able to provide this. This also, I would say to quite an extent, is a figure mark for a leadership quality. I mean, when you ask somebody who's a leader, there's no direct answer to that, right? If I ask you what you consider, who is a leader? If you are already in a position of power and then you say that I'm a leader, that doesn't work, right? Because if you are a manager, your subordinate is bound to listen to you. That subordinate doesn't have an option. But what makes you a good leader, that instead of using your position as a manager to force people to listen to you, you do enough that the person is inspired to listen to you. So in a GD, what happens is, if you have the right kind of data, the right attitude, the right kind of entries, the right points, the way you should be making it, that it impresses on the group. They want to listen to you rather than, be forced to listen or whatever of that sort. They want to listen to you. And you will see that in any GD, in the first 2-3 minutes, you mostly know who the best speakers are. Not because they speak a lot. It is never about speaking a lot. Believe me, that's on the contrary a big negative. That in a 15 minutes GD, you spoke for 10 minutes. Believe me, that's the maximum negative you can think of getting. Because this is a group discussion. Everybody is supposed to be in, right? So problem solving skills can come in various components. What if somebody's been a bully? Like somebody's constantly trying to dominate the GD, not letting other people speak. Is there any way that you can come out of it? Is there some tactics that you can use so that that person gets sidelined and you guys can actually have a proper discussion? This is what is problem solving. So when they're looking at a GD and when they see something of this sort happening, you mark the person who has this ability. When you share your thoughts, how do you share them? Do you share them to inspire? So that are you able to support somebody else's good point to bring out a new angle altogether? So this is where all these skills come together to give an effect of what you are as a person. Okay, so this is something you should be looking at. Now, the next set that I would talk about is, if this is the requisite, what is the action plan? What should I do now? Okay, what should you be doing as new graduates when you are readying yourself for the corporate? Okay, so the way I see it, the first important thing that you should do is work on building your personal brand. Okay, first find out what your USP is. USP is your unique selling point. And you've learned how to communicate your skills and strengths in a unique and appealing manner. You don't have to be the loudest or the proudest person over there. That never works. Believe me, it doesn't really work. It will only hurt you. Okay, you should be confident, but not somebody who gets on somebody else's nerves. Okay, so I think one of the most important thing that you can do now is to work on your SWOT. I hope you know what a SWOT is: your strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. I think it's a part of your plans. I mean your studies as well. So it's very important to work on your SWOT at this point of time. Okay, so because you're figuring out your next your life decision now, like which corporate you are joining, what kind of job you are joining, and why do you want to join it? Where do you want to see yourself 10 years down the lane, 5 years down the lane? What is the ladder that you're looking at working on? So when you work on your SWOT, you will manage to answer these questions. Okay, based on your strength, what do you think your USP is? So if you ask me, my USP has always been my confidence and my communication skills. So I chose a career where these two things became the prime ingredient in where I could, use it to the maximum benefit. So I could figure it out pretty early because of my schoolings and the college that I went through, and I could do that. So I worked on it. So I would suggest that this is the first thing, that you first try and make yourself to be a brand. When I say a brand, why do I say a brand? So if you ask very simply, what is a brand? Okay, a very simple question. So a brand, if I put it very, very simple in a very in a layman's language without complicating it with any jargon. A brand is a promise. Okay. So when you buy a Levi's or when you buy an Alan Solly, okay, you know that you are getting the promise of the Levi's that this jeans is going to deliver exactly what a Levi's does, promise to deliver, right? So the same way, work yourself like that this is what I am. So when somebody looks at your profile, looks at your skill sets, that person should get exactly what your profile is promising. So work yourself on that. Do you have that much of caliber? It is not about doing 10,000 things or winning the national championship or something. It is nothing of that sort. Okay. It is just knowing what you are good at, what you are bad. It is very important to know your weakness as well, because if you don't know your weakness, you certainly don't know your strength, believe me. And if you yourself don't know what your strengths and weaknesses are, then what are you even talking about? How are you even claiming that you can talk about my company or my things? That's what the company hire is going to think. You don't even know yourself. So how do you suggest that you are going to know about my products, about my things? So please work on knowing yourself and in setting up your own ideologies about who you are. What are your value system? Do you have a value system? Have you ever asked yourself that what kind of values do you believe in? Okay, what is even a value for you? Okay, so do ask yourself these questions. And this is the first thing that I would suggest, that if you are preparing towards this, you should start working on it. The next thing that works is, please construct a career plan. I mean, I know money is a big motivator and all of us want to earn money. Yes, money is important and nobody is denying the importance of money. But I would still suggest that don't let it be the driving force behind your career decisions. Believe me, I have seen n number of careers going down the hill because of these small but very important wrong decisions. Because you are let's say somebody's in a stable job, working fine, but starts getting itchy after 5 years or so and thinking, I can do better. Chooses a company not as stable, but with a lot of money. In 3 months down, not really working out anymore. And it's so difficult to come back after a certain age. Until a particular platform, until you're an executive or a particular level of management, getting a job is still pretty okay. You can get any job. But the question is, are you looking for a job or are you looking for a career? These two are two separate terms altogether, believe me. So let your first job define the kind of career that you're looking at. So ask yourself, what is it that you like to do? Okay, because I believe that if I do something that I like to do, I would automatically be pretty good at it. If I enjoy my job, if I enjoy what I do, I would strive to do better. I would want to stay in the industry. I would want to grow up. I enjoy training. So almost 17 years now I'm doing it. Okay, because I love doing it. I used to be a corporate trainer. I loved that for reasons, I moved a little bit towards the entrance exams. I loved it as well. Okay, so I made sure that my footmark remained on the same platforms because that's where I wanted to go. Okay, so I would suggest that ask yourself, is it about a job? That is it this the first job that you need to get a job at any? So that's a different ball game. That no, I just need a job. I just need this money. But if you're looking at a career, then I would suggest think a little differently. Think about what you like to do, because it's so you're so confident when you're sitting in the interview because you know that you want to do this because you have the right skill sets and your heart is telling you to go over there. So that honesty, that you are compelled to do this, all these things come out. Okay, so just think a little bit about it and think of a career plan in 5 years, 10 years. Okay, I get it. Not everything always works out. It's fine, but at least have a plan. At least know where you want to go. Okay, what happens, we'll see. It's not a big deal. Nobody knows life anyway, but it's always good to have some kind of a plan, right? Yes, this is very, very important now. Very, okay. So your resume actually gets only 6 seconds. Okay, only 6 seconds by potential hirers, the job, the people who are going to offer you sit for the interview, offer you the job, or they just give you 6 seconds. So if you have not constructed your resume in a manner which catches attention within those 6 seconds, then that entire exercise of work making this has gone to waste. That thing simply adds no value to your candidature at all. It's just gone. So please don't let it be that. Okay, pay attention to the things that are needed for the resume, the way you should be writing it, the words that should describe as to what is it that you want to do, the way you are spelling out your achievements, the way you are adding your skill sets over there. Please do talk about it in a manner which catches attention, where you should highlight, where you should not highlight, what you should include, what you should never include. Okay, have a very clear idea as to what the resume holds for you and what is it that you want the other person to know about you. Does it impress? So please make sure that your resume gives you the right entry to the room. So it makes a lot of difference when it comes to landing your career. So I can't even begin to tell you how important resumes have become now. Okay, and mostly if you're sending resumes through mostly everything is on the net, through the net now. You're sending it over the email. So as I said, just a glance through on the page that it comes in front of them. So the way you're wording it, the way you are, the representation makes a huge lot of difference. So please pay attention, okay? And it should always look very professional, okay? Always spell check, grammar check. These are unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable that you have made a grammar or a spelling mistake anywhere in your resume, okay? The last thing that I'm taking up over here is multi-skilling. Okay. You just being good at just one thing no longer works. Okay. So if you are somebody who's extremely, let's say you are a 10-pointer, okay, you've got grades which is 9.5 and 10 all throughout. But when it comes to execution of a plan or works with other people, you flounder. You are a loner, you are an introvert, you don't like talking to people, then it becomes very, very difficult for the company to imagine, okay, you could become a great research scholar, maybe, or get into jobs that doesn't really require too much of people, which I'm not really very sure how many of it's actually possible, but still, there's some areas where possibly you can become an author if you want. Okay. Again, that I think is difficult, but still. So multi-skilling is what else do you also bring to the table? Okay, so here your strengths and.
Sorry for interrupting.
I'm sorry?
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yeah, a little low, but yeah, tell me.
Ma'am, we have a few set of questions from the audience. Can you please wrap up in a few minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So multi-skilling is something that what else can you bring on to the table? And what are the other, what would you sell across the table for them apart from what your CV says or what your grades talk about you? So apart from those grades, what else are you bringing in? So as I said, the various other things that possibly you would have done with your life, your abilities, the best way to represent them is your multi-skilling. So think about the other abilities that you can bring to the table. Okay, since I've been asked to wrap up, this is what we do in our online PDP program. We take you through all these motions of business communication, helping you build your profile or a CV, group discussion, personal interviews and all. So this is what we specialize in. Okay, so, okay, we can have the open house. I would take questions now.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And your deliberations on combination of hard, soft skills, resilience, building on your own personal brand, I think it will surely help all the students prosper in their corporate career.
So now the house is open for Q&A session. Ma'am, one of the students wants to ask that sometimes in SIP, some of the bosses exploit the interns by forcing them to work for extra hours to do their personal work. So how should we avoid this situation?
Okay, so we go for the kill. Okay, see, while I am somebody who completely believes in an open communication, there is a very fine balance between, uh, not being rude and being strong. First of all, I don't think you should allow it personally as a person, because I wouldn't, and I have never taken it. Okay, but there's a way of not having to blow it out. Okay, you first try and have a straight talk in the sense like you try and give some kind of an excuse in the sense you need to go home at a particular point of time, or you have to catch. My excuse used to be because I used to live in Mumbai that I had to catch a train. Okay, so I couldn't because I would have to catch the Mumbai local. So there's no way you could stop me. But you can try and see that if it works. If it doesn't, be very clear in stating that you are here for a job and that's the job that you're going to perform. As long as there's no question on your competency on the job, there's simply no reason for you to do anything else. But that, again, the wording, the way you handle it is going to be very important. But I would always suggest not taking it lying down, because once you let it happen, you will always have to let it happen. Is that okay with you? Do you need any other clarification?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. So the next question is how ethics, communication, and diversity legislation can impact a company.
I didn't get the question. There's so many. You said ethics.
How ethics, communication, and diversity legislation can impact a company.
Impact the corporate.
Yeah, corporate company.
Okay, I'm not sure actually how this question is relevant, because this is a very deep question. You will have to go into the diversity part, you will have to go into the ethics part, you will have to go to the individual parts of it. So I'm not sure how you want me to answer it. I mean, what do you want me to take up? Give me one thing to take up and I'll take it up.
Diversity.
Diversity is huge, you have people from all walks of life, all kinds of people coming in. Okay, so it's a global workplace now. So let's take, for example, you're working with somebody from Spain and from China. Now they are absolutely different in terms of their cultural diversity, the way they look at people to people interaction, the way the Chinese talk and way a Spanish or an American talks. Believe me, there's a huge difference in the level of communication, the way they use language. Okay, one is extremely formal, the other is extremely informal. So you being an Indian, if you're the Indian in the mix over there, you are constantly balancing out both the languages, over there. So there, how you play nice on how you manage to bring everything together when you're working for a common cause is how you handle diversity. So the more if you study in a college wherein you have people coming in from all over the country, I think you would have faced it firsthand in your canteens as well. So that's how you handle it in a workforce, but just a little more formal.
Yes. So next question is, how can we adjust ourselves in an office environment in which our senior employees do not support us?
Yeah, so that sometimes is a very, very normal scene that you can see. There's something called a clique. I don't know if you've heard of the word. Clique is basically, people who have been together for a very long time. They tend to form this small circle. And because I'm a senior, I'm supposed to behave in a manner, and as a junior, you're supposed to behave in a manner. Okay. It would take a little time. What I would say is always be respectful, always be attentive, and do your best. Believe me, if you are somebody who does the job, if you are an asset, this thing is not going to stay. They are going to melt down. They are going to see you for your value that you add to them, and they would obviously want you to be on their fold. So you'd have to keep on chipping at the barrier. This will always happen in one office or the other, but it's not a big deal to deal with. Just be good at what you do. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering the question so accurately. We consider it as a privilege to propose a vote of thanks to all. We pay a huge thanks to Ms. Sudeshna Chakravarti, ma'am, who has spread her valuable time for us and pondered us with great learning. Huge thanks to our faculty members, staff members, and the enthusiastic audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. It was an absolute pleasure to interact. Thank you.